made to be followed. Life is meant to be lived. The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho has transformed the world and sold millions of copies. Thank you for being here today, and we're going to talk about the impact of The Alchemist as a book in and of itself, the story of Santiago, the main character of The Alchemist, and how the story that you have always been looking for is within you. The Alchemist had humble beginnings where only one book was sold in the first 6 months, and the second book 2 months after that, bought by the same person who bought the first book. The publishers were so mad, they took the copy, gave Paulo his rights back, and kicked him out. He was then left to decide, what am I going to do next? Am I going to say that this book is a failure, or am I going to keep going and share with the world what I believe the world needs to know? He then went door to door to other publishers and finally had somebody pick up the book. And then over the next few months, a few thousand copies of the book was sold. Then an American came to Brazil and was interested in the book and translating it to English. And they were able to reach out to HarperCollins, where the book was translated into the first of 80 languages, which is the most languages that any living author has ever had a book translated. And he was 41. He had no idea if this was going to be successful. He thought his life might be over if this didn't happen. And yet he pursued his dream and wanted to share it with the world. He's had many interviews since then, and all of them have asked, did you know it was going to be this big of a success? And he said, no, I don't know. I didn't know. And I still am not entirely sure. But that's the thing about it, is he believed that his story mattered because it wasn't just his story that he was sharing. It was the story of every person in the world who had a dream and who had the will to go after it. And he continued to write, and he wrote 2 more books. The Pilgrimage actually came before The Alchemist, but The Warrior of the Light came after as a way to sum up both books. The Pilgrimage is the story of how The Alchemist came to life and his actual pilgrimage to Spain, where he goes on the road to Santiago. And that is where the real story becomes The Alchemist, and he is able to portray a wealth of knowledge through simple stories. And The Pilgrimage is actually a really good book that has really interesting, simple exercises that you can do to step into certain mindsets and let go of what you're being completely obsessed with. One of the most important ones I remember was walking half the speed that you usually do and observing the environment around you and really letting it sink in and being present with the moment. Another one that was really interesting was the cruelty exercise, as he calls it, which is him biting into his nail or digging into his nail every time he comes up with a cruel thought against himself. And just the idea of doing that alone made me think, wow, I would have very raw nail beds from doing that, because I know that my thoughts are not always so nice to myself. So if you are interested in how The Alchemist came to be, The Pilgrimage is a really good book, and I just recently reread it because I feel like it's a place that I'm currently in a place where I need to step on that journey again and to remind myself of why we're here and what it all means. And that's a really good one. I also reread The Warrior of the Light. This is the newer version of the same book that I read, but it's just spread out a little nicer. So it has like the main description of the little story. So it's really easy, and I think I read it in like an hour. So both of them are really easy to read. The Alchemist I haven't read in a while, but I believe I will reread again just because of the inspiration behind it, and that we are all walking this road of life and that we have to decide what we're going to do with it. And The Pilgrimage happened when I think he was 38, 39. And within The Pilgrimage, he talks about how he's one day going to be able to commemorate his pilgrimage, his walk on the road to Santiago, and that he might transform other people's lives with that book, which is what The Alchemist becomes. And he certainly transformed a lot of people's lives. I know that when I was in middle school, this book was like everywhere, and we had to read for like 15 minutes during a break that we had between classes, and this book was like passed around because it was easy, and there was so many copies of it, and I didn't actually read it until I think it was like 22. So never too late to get into the book or into reading either. And I just wanted to talk about what Paulo did, because what he was able to do is incredible, because he lived an entire life before he ever sat down and decided to share with the world his writing and what it means to be a writer to him, and that he knew that that was his gift that he could give to the world, and that was exactly what The Alchemist was. And now the reason that it transforms so many people's lives is it talks from a point of view that all of us can relate to. It talks about a person who is really young and wants to go out into the world and find the treasure that they're searching for, that there is something that we're looking for and that it is somehow outside of ourselves. And one of the most important things is he meets somebody who has let go of the dream that is within him. And The Alchemist, the whole book warns about there's a dream inside of you, but someday it will stop singing to you if you wait long enough to go after it. And that might be at any age, but you have always the ability to pursue it. And that is what Santiago takes away, and that is a really powerful name for the character if you have read The Pilgrimage, because he walks the road to Santiago, and therefore that road is actually ourselves. And so him being named Santiago is pretty important, because there's roads we all walk, but it is our own that matters the most, and that it is really within us. And he goes through and he meets a girl who he falls in love with, and he has to leave her behind and follow his dreams. And then he meets a shepherd who has these lambs at the very, very beginning, and he tells him, I am going on this journey to find my treasure. And it leads him from Brazil to the plains of Africa, and then he ends up going back where he finds that the treasure was buried at the tree that he was always sitting at as he was growing up. So the treasure wasn't somewhere in a far off land, it was always right where we are, and that we don't have to traverse the entire world in order to figure that out. And that is what Paulo finds out in The Pilgrimage as well, is that the sword that he is looking for, the sword of the tradition as he calls it, is the story of ourselves, and that the tradition encapsulates all religions, and that it is really about being the person that you are meant to be, and that being a human doesn't mean you're perfect or that you're an angel. It means just what it means. It means that you are a human, and that you are walking this earth with decisions that you look back and wouldn't make again, and with the places that you wouldn't visit again and the places that you would. And on each step you're taking, you're learning more about yourself, which is where the Warrior of Light comes from. And that is pretty much where Paulo takes all of the knowledge that he has learned from The Pilgrimage and The Alchemist and puts it into a manual for us to be able to reflect on and to say, all right, there is a grand world out there, but it is up to me to decide where I'm going to go and how I'm going to bring those pieces of information with me, and that it is my own information that matters most. And that is really the reality of those three books, is that, hey, there is a world out there that you are going to interact with, that you're going to fall in love with, that you're going to be sad over. But what matters most is how you move through it and how you accept yourself along the way. And there is a master in The Pilgrimage who he follows throughout the road, who shares with him various insights. And one of the most important is this idea that we have turned love into suffering, that if we are single, we are pining to be with someone. If we are in a marriage, we are often willing or wanting to be single and to not be in that place because we feel so bored. And that it is this association that love is suffering that we have created that is hurting us along the way. And that if we were really to become who we want to be and who we actually are, we would realize that love is all around us, and it is through every single thing that we do that we express that love to ourselves and to the world. And even when we're not making the best decisions, we're doing what we can with what we have, and that if we actually resonated with our own truth and decided, this is who I'm going to be, and whatever the world is telling me isn't what I want, it's just a reflection of someone else's dream, then we can actually get to a point where we're saying, you know what, I know you guys all have decisions and thoughts, but I need to follow my own path. And very recently, in March of 2024, Paulo Coelho came out with Maktub, which is the article where the Warrior of the Light was pulled from and created. But Maktub is based off of the newspaper he worked for, where he shared insights about the Alchemist, which turned into the Warrior of the Light, but that is more experiences from that time period. I haven't bought the book yet because I bought 7 other books from him, which I also want to read, but I will buy that one and do that as kind of a follow-up to this video at some point. So I hope you enjoy this video, and let me know down below if there's anything else you want to learn from Paulo. But the last thing I want to leave you off with is this idea of walking the road ourselves, and that no one can do it for us. Whether you read The Pilgrimage or The Alchemist or The Warrior of Light, and I'm sure even Maktub, that is the reality that is going to be true for you. It does not matter which decision you make. You are the one that deals with its consequences, and it is your intention behind those choices that you have to face. And that the reality of the situation is that everyone around you is walking their own road, and sometimes they may intersect and sometimes they never meet again, but it is up to you to decide how you're going to deal with it and how you're going to react when it comes up. And Maktub means the truth, and that is simply what he's trying to portray to us, that our truth is within us and not in some far off distance someday we may or may not reach. The truth of who you are is located within you and has always been there. The call on your life is the one that has always been there, that has been present with you throughout time. And you are going to be better or worse for it, depending on what you decide to do and how. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you've been through if you are trying to move forward. You are a new version of yourself every second you're alive, and that the thing that is going to hold you back is the things that you allow. So who are you going to be, and why is the question that all of these books and all the masters in these books are asking of us, is who do you want to be? Can you become present with the moment and hear the call and hear that it is not an abstract place, it is not in the far off distance, it is within us, that call to be the person that we want to be. And that may sound abstract, but it is the thing that you are looking for. What have you always gone back to? For me, it's always been writing. I've always enjoyed writing. It felt the only way that I could connect to myself and therefore to others, because I wanted to simplify what I understood in a way for other people to connect to that story. And it is something that I always go back to, no matter how stressed or hurt or how much I've left it. I always go back to it, and I am trying to, as I have always tried, to make it more consistent part of my life and to share with others that journey. And whatever it is that you go back to, whether it's hanging out with friends and laughing and having joy, that is your purpose in this world, and that is the thing that you are supposed to be doing. Life is meant to be lived, and we don't necessarily need to leave millions of dollars of legacy behind us. We could simply leave a life behind that was well lived and well deserved to be lived. We all have the right to be happy, and we can't give up on that. And that is what The Alchemist is trying to tell us, that our treasure exists within ourselves, that we take to these new locations and hand to other people in the conversations, in the exchanges of glances, and in the laughter that we share with others. It is in those moments that we are able to become truly who we're supposed to be, and by sharing all the time. So if you have ever read The Alchemist, you might want to check out the other 3. They're all really good. I don't think it would take you more than maybe a few days to read it, even if you're only reading a few hours or half an hour. So check them out. They have changed my life and given me perspective, not because they're necessarily the most profound, but that's the most important part. It's the simplicity of the idea that we are who we are and that no one can take that from us unless we hand it freely away. Let me know what you have thought about The Alchemist, if you've read it, if you've only heard of it. Have you read his new book? What does it mean to you to be a person that a treasure lives within that you are going to share to the world? What treasure is it? Who are you going to be? I hope to see you soon, but until then, I hope you have an amazing day, week, and just enjoy life. I'll see you soon.